Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the True Crime Show with myself, Kevin Moore. Now, the True Crime Show features the most shocking killers in true crime history and the authors that have written about them. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined with my guest, Brian Whitney, who has been a prison advocate, landscaper, and homeless outreach worker. Now, he's written and co-authored numerous books and has been featured in Newsweek, Esquire, Dr. Phil, Fox News, and many more. Now, he joins me today to discuss his book, My Son the Killer, the untold story of Luka Magnotta and One Lunatic, One Ice Pick. Brian Whitney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
It's such a pleasure to get you on. I was just saying off air there with you, the work that you've done, some of the books that you've done are just fantastic. And yes, we're going to talk about what we're about to talk about in a moment, but you know, your other books are just as good as well. And how long have you been doing true crime for?
Oh, I think probably about 5 years. I got in touch with Gil Valle, who's the Cannibal Cop, and I wrote a book with him. And then once I did that, it just opened up a lot of doors to like get hooked up with a lot of other people that were involved in true crime as well.
That does not seem that long to be in this genre for. I mean, what were you doing before this?
Well, I started writing probably about 8 years ago, writing books about 8 years ago. And then I did a couple books with a couple porn stars. I co-wrote books with a couple porn stars. And Gil's case came out, and I was really interested in it just in general, just the actual civil rights aspect of it. I used to work for the American Civil Liberties Union in civil rights. So it was something that really interested me to do. So then it just kind of like kept rolling. I try to write like a couple books a year at least.
Yeah, absolutely. You've done some great work so far. And you're in Maine.
Yeah.
And I was just saying to you, one day I'm going to come out there and I'm going to, we're going to record face to face and, do a couple of video podcasts together because I just think, having looked into some of your work and studied, some bits and pieces that you've been doing, it's, you really have a way of putting this into a book and making it, enjoyable as well. And I think, obviously, the book that we're about to talk about, this was based on was the Netflix docuseries based on the book, or were you part of that docuseries in some way?
It's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird story, but no, it wasn't based on the book, but they did approach us, meaning myself. I wrote a book with Anna Yurkin, who's Luka's mother, and then I'm also the only person that Luka's ever given an interview to as well. So my interview with him was in the book also. So they approached us from Raw Television, the documentarians, and Mark Lewis is the guy that was pretty much in charge of it. And they asked her to be on the show. We had to sign like a no compete thing. They paid her a little bit of money, which is weird. So the whole thing was kind of an odd situation.
Yeah, and just before we leave Maine, how did you end up in Maine as well?
I'm from Maine. Yeah, I mean, I'm from Maine. Yeah, it's like I've moved away a couple times, but this is like this is my home base.
Oh wow, what an inspiring, beautiful place to to write your books as well. I'll just say that.
I love Maine, man. I'm 100% into it.
No, when I knew you was in Maine, I was like, oh my god, I get it. You know what I mean? I get why the stars go down there and stay out the way. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I live in Portland, which is a little city, but I'm like, I'm like a quarter mile from the ocean. Tons of bars and restaurants, which you can't go to right now, obviously.
Well, yeah,
still,
absolutely, yeah.
really cool. Sure.
Have you found yourself writing a bit more in these times, or?
Yeah, I mean, I always like I'm in the mindset you got to keep. If you stop doing it, so many people think it's so difficult to write a book, and it is. But if you just keep busting at it like day after day, then it gets done. So I'm working on like 3 different things right now.
Right. Okay. Well, congrats on what you've done so far. So, okay, My Son the Killer. All right. So,
Yeah.
what inspired you to do this book in the first place?
Well, so Anna, his mother, like she had a publishing deal with a fairly large publisher, and she had a big advance, and then they were just like, we can't publish this, basically. So then she started shopping around looking for someone to take it, a publisher I work with often called Wild Blue put me in touch with her. And at that time, I didn't think I was going to be able to interview Luka, which was a bizarre situation unto itself. But so I worked with Anna on the book. She basically hired me to be a writer to help her get the book done, and we put it out. So I was kind of put in touch with her.
Right. Okay. How or could we summarize "Don't Fuck with Cats," the Netflix docuseries? How would you put that in just a few, in just a bit of a conversation?
I mean, I liked it, but Anna definitely did not come off that great in it. I don't think. It was interesting in the sense that they did not, they were very like, oh, we want to like let your story come out and so on and so forth. And really, she kind of wound up looking a little bit like, she was sort of the foil, so to speak, talking about Manny but it was a very well done documentary. It just there was they'd left a lot of stuff out. I mean, he's schizophrenic. They never touched on that. He denies he's schizophrenic, but he is schizophrenic. So there were a lot of things they didn't talk about, but as far as entertainment goes, I thought it was definitely entertaining.
Yes, 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 it was. And so the docuseries came out before, obviously, your book did. Sorry, your book came out after the
But the book came
docuseries.
out first. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the book came out first, and then it sold okay. But then after the documentary came out, it definitely like pumped the book up financially quite a bit for a few months. A lot of people hated it, of course, because Indiana wrote it. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's kind of crazy that, as you say, the way that the mum comes across in this, um, obviously she totally believes Luca that, he was not responsible for any of this. And
yeah,
just talk about Luca's crimes briefly.
okay. Well, I mean, obviously, because if you haven't seen the movie, the cat word is because of cat killing videos that he, in theory, was responsible for, and then after that, he ended up committing a very atrocious crime by killing a young man that he met on Craigslist, hacking up his body, and of course when you talk to Luca, not to jump ahead, but this is the one thing he won't talk about, like the actual crimes themselves. Like he won't actually talk about it. So then he went on the run. In Canada, it was like an incredibly huge case. One of the things that was interesting to me about this was I thought everybody knew about it in America because I'm the kind of person that follows this kind of thing. So to me, it was huge. I'd even interviewed Mark Merrick, who runs bestgore.com before, like, because Mark is the guy who put up the video in the first place, because that's an important thing to talk about. He videotaped this, of course. One lunatic, one ice pick, put it up on the internet. It became I don't recommend watching it, to be honest with you, but it's there. You can still find it. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but the crime itself was enormous in Canada. Very atrocious crime. Did all sorts of things with the corpse, mutilated it, brought in a dog. Um, just awful stuff, basically. And yes, Anna, I don't know if she thinks he's innocent of this stuff, but she definitely thinks other people were involved and he was coerced and so on and so forth.
And obviously, does she follow what you're up to now? I mean, obviously, you worked with her quite closely on this book. Do you think she's, took an active interest in how you've portrayed her input in this book as well?
Well, I mean, we're still in touch all the time because we split royalties on it. One and two, there's always people like Dr. Phil wanted to talk to her recently, and then there's always people that want to like talk to her. Like she just turned down Dr. Phil. There's documentarians that want to do like supposedly like her side of the story and do a documentary that just offered her some money, which I think she's turned down because now after this experience, she just kind of like wants to hang out. But I mean, my job's to write the best book possible. It's not, I mean, I respect Anna and I like Anna, but obviously we definitely disagree on things of that nature. Luka doesn't like me at all now. I know that.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that he's put out some stuff. He doesn't really like my no. He doesn't really like anybody, but Luka and Anna are now estranged, and
Oh no, wow, really?
yeah, they don't talk at all. And yeah, like Luka definitely does not. I'm not his favorite person either.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, because I heard you mentioned, well, not well, the case mentioned. Sorry, shall I say on the Joe Rogan show just a couple of weeks ago, and
Okay.
yeah, because he had just watched the Netflix docuseries, and so
Yeah.
he was just discussing it on his show, and I thought of you at the time when he was talking about it because I knew that we were going to have an interview soon. So yeah, no, a lot of bigger name people have discussed it, haven't they? And also and some of them, like you say, like the Dr. Phil, they want or they would have liked an interview with her. So just remind us all then. So she feels that he's innocent, he did none of these crimes, and he should not be locked up.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with her. It's like it's not really all that consistent. I don't know. I don't know if she thinks that he's totally innocent, but she believes in the whole Manny theory of that there's this shadowy figure that was kind of controlling Luca, and maybe Manny did it, and maybe Manny killed the cats, and maybe Manny, was the one that. So innocent's kind of a tough term, but she definitely. There's a lot of different ways she sticks up for him. She tried to get him released because of COVID, like recently. That was in the news for a bit. She's like, "Oh my God, like this COVID, and Luke is going to, Luca might die." And she does things of that nature that I don't really. I like Anna. I'm not trying to. I'm just being honest about situation. So the things I would say to her as well if we were talking, but So yeah, and then again in the documentary, I mean, just even the camera angles and like how they shot her, and so she never talked to me about it, but it wasn't what she was expecting. I know she thought she was going to set the record straight, kind of thing, as opposed to be the designated crazy lady. I think.
I've seen this before in the true crime docu-series that I'm working on. The mother of the guy that was participated in the murder. She will not. She defended him until her death, shall I say? Right. That's the thing with mums, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, exactly. In some ways, you can't. Like everyone wants their mom to stick by them until the end, and so on and so forth. So. I mean, I think that's really what she's doing, but not all moms would write a book about it. So I think that was sort of like why, there was a little blowback, around that kind of scenario with the book itself. There was a period when the documentary came out. If you look at Amazon and Goodreads, it was just like every day. It was like another like 1-star review of like oh my God, and just there was a lot of blowback for a few months. It's kind of the Tiger King. It was almost Tiger King before Tiger King. And so for 2 months, everyone was talking about it.
Yeah, and that docu-series is going to remain on Netflix for a while because it's been pretty popular by the look of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just so unusual. Now with Luka, how long did you communicate with him for in prison? Was that over the telephone? Was it writing? Was it both?
It was both. It wasn't for that long. As I said, I wasn't expecting that to be an option, and I was pretty psyched, when it was an option because when I worked for the ACLU, I worked with prisoners. Like this isn't like that odd for me to like when I worked. I used to go into prisons and meet with murderers anyway. So I'm like actually, so it wasn't that odd for me to like, oh my God, I'm talking to Luka Magnotta or anything. I was just, I was psyched because it would add some perspective, or I thought it would add some perspective. So we wrote 2 letters, but the letters he wrote back were like about, in combination, probably about 55, 60 pages. And then we just talked once on the phone for about 2 hours. So it gave me like all the information that I was looking for certain.
Well, that was amazing. You were able to speak for 2 hours. Because I've been interviewing a prisoner from California State Prison, but that's so different to Canada, probably. You know what I mean?
I'm working with a guy right now in Canada in prison, believe it or not. And yeah, it's definitely different. it's not nearly as strict.
Well, you can't even go in and bloody interview them face to face in California. It's all got to
Right,
be done over the phone.
right.
Unless you
Right.
go, I mean, even if you go to visit, you can go to visit. But what I'm saying is, if you wanted to put them on a documentary, you've got no chance.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure.
Yeah. So 2 hours on that phone, and what was his demeanor? What was he like? I mean, was it? I mean, because obviously, when you speak to people that have done a murder, they seem to be. It's just like a conversation, isn't it? In a sense, people would be surprised at that. It's for
Yeah.
what it is. They're able to just talk like we are.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I talk to him the same way I'm talking to you. I mean, with the same, I'm pretty much the same with everybody. So, I mean, it was interesting, but at the same point, there were just a lot of like continuous talking points about how everyone's obsessed with him and everybody's like out to get him, and this is just the media that's making all this up. And he didn't like take responsibility. He did not only take responsibility for the killing. I mean, he didn't take responsibility for like anything, like all this stuff about, he photoshopped. I mean, it's really obvious that like there's tons of photoshopped photos. He had a bunch of, sock puppet accounts that he would use. And he denies all of that. He's like, I never did that. I never did this. It's just like, to him, it's like somehow he just was picked out as being this person that all these things were said about, and like not one of them is true. So I mean, that's a little bizarre, but I wasn't trying to like well, the whole thing's a little bizarre obviously, but I wasn't trying to interview him like I'm questioning about what he said. I was just trying to get information from him about his thoughts. So
Well, no, I was going to say that. Have you still got the original audio recordings for that interview?
yeah, I've got the letters and I've got the audio recording. I do, for sure.
Well, that would be interesting. I mean, one day, would you ever release that? Do you think, or?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've thought about it, but it's I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think about who was interested in hearing it, and what the situation was, and so on and so forth. It's not the kind of thing that I would just necessarily like shop, or like, something of that nature. And then if, what, in a sense, like it was a private conversation with he and I, so I don't think I would give it away unless there was like a really good reason to.
I don't know whether you had prepped him or not, that this is, a recording that could end up, where it could end up. And yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
no,
yeah.
it's a good question. It's also the kind of, well, like if I were to talk to somebody else like 2 years from now, I'd be like, oh yeah, you're the guy that like, gave Lucas like in a record, you know what I'm saying? So I probably wouldn't, yeah, unless there was a really compelling reason.
So just remind the audience then, how did they prosecute him in the end? Because there must have been so much evidence of him and his connection to the crimes that he had committed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of evidence, and that's what's really weird about it. Like I say, I mean, he's denying all these things when he's like literally like on video, like bringing like body parts, like down to, it's very bizarre. So he also claims that he never wanted anything to do with a not criminally responsible defense. Like that's what they tried to, that his lawyers talked him into it. That he says he's never been. When I mentioned the schizophrenia thing, like there's tons of records like of him being diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he claims he's never been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So the whole deal is his lawyers tried to say that he was not criminally responsible because he was mentally ill, and that didn't fly, and he was convicted. He's very interested. Even the guy that found him, looking at the videos in Europe, like he'll still say he wasn't watching videos of himself. Like that stuff, like that's really important to him. When he was arrested, he says, no, I was watching like, Ava Gardner movies. I wasn't looking at myself. And just right down the line, he pretty much denies every single aspect of everything. So.
And obviously, when they convicted him, how many years was it? Obviously, life, wasn't it? Without the possibility of.
No, I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember the exact, but he does have the possibility. Canada is very. I think he would be. Yeah, I think he would potentially be like maybe 65 or something like that. But I'm almost positive he'd never get out. But there is the slight possibility that he could get out.
Okay, well, Canada is different then in some respects. Yeah. Okay.
Very Very much so. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember
That's
exactly, but
okay.
I can promise you that it's not life without possibility.
Right. Now he does have a partner in prison, does he not?
Yeah. Yeah, that was supposed that's in the book too, and that was supposed to be a much larger part of the book. Like, and I cut like a lot of that out. But yeah, he does. He's married. Um, Anthony Jolin, I believe the guy's name is, and he's also in for murder. Anna went to the wedding and so on and so forth, and
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, because did he not deny his sexuality at one point, or to many people? I mean, that was kept in the closet, wasn't it? Not for a while.
I think for a little while, but not really, because he was also he was a prostitute, and he'll own up to that. To the extent that I think when he was younger it was, but he talks a lot about being a high rent escort and how he traveled all over the world, which is almost certainly not true. He was. I mean, the escort part is, but the high rent and traveling all over the world thing was not.
Right. Okay. How many people or voices do you hear out there that wish him to obviously not only get out, but they'll also say that he's innocent as well, and then completely opposing
Not
the story?
There are a few. There are a few. There's this one guy his name's he goes by Nico Tineman, which stands for I am. It's an anagram for I am innocent. And he's got a really active YouTube channel that's all about about you know Luka being innocent and so on and so forth. And he contacted me a couple times, but for the most part, that's not a very common thing.
I'm just trying to get in his head as to why he would why he has obviously there's so much evidence there to show that he was and he did do the things that they say he did. And why do you think he finds it so difficult to admit to some of his crimes?
I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, he's of all the different people I've talked to, he's by far the most difficult to actually figure out what the motivations are here. Even when he did the and see, this is why he hates me, because I'm going to say something like this. But even when he actually filmed the video and put it out there, he'll still deny that he did that. I mean, he'll say, "Oh, that wasn't." You can see it's him. I mean, you can definitely there's a part in there. You can definitely 100% see it's him. It's his apartment, and so on and so forth. And some of me thinks that he thought he actually was going to get away with the whole thing, just like he did with the cat thing, and just kind of become more and more infamous and so on and so forth, and that none of this would ever happen. So, I mean, I think it's hard to tell whether he is so nuts that he just that he just really doesn't realize that he did all of this stuff, or more likely is that he's just so sociopathic that he'd never just own up to what he's done. The Manny thing that was the biggest thing with Anna, his mother. She was and to me, it's the same thing with Manny. He's either extremely schizophrenic and Manny's just this voice in his head. Because when he met with Romeo Salta and all that other stuff, the attorney, and I mean, he met with a lawyer and he was like, Manny did this to me, Manny did that to me. I won't go through all the things that he said Manny did to him, but really, really, awful, disgusting things. And it's really difficult to tell, what would his motivation be for doing that either. So I don't know, to be honest, what he's very confusing character for
Yeah.
certain.
Did you ever question him about how he feels on for the victims of this crime as well? There was any
He
things?
won't talk about that. He just won't. He just won't talk about it. Even when I said to Anna, she was like, "Well, if you want to talk to him," but he just won't. He won't talk about that, and it's not just because what she told me was that he just gets very upset. So it's very difficult for him to talk about, which obviously implies that he did it in the first place. But yeah, he won't talk about the actual things with the cat. I asked him about the cats, and he's just like, "Oh no, I love." It's not funny, but it's just so he's like, "I love cats." He's like, this is what he's actually saying to me. "I love cats. Cats are just the absolute best." he's like, I take care of cats in prison. That's the other thing. He wants everyone to know how happy he is in prison. He's just constantly like, my life in prison is so great. So he won't only just not deny that he won't only deny it's okay, man. He won't only deny the fact that he did this, he also will act like he just is the cat's biggest fan. And there's 3 videos of him doing awful things to cats. It's just weird.
That is just so weird, and to know that he's happy in prison. Well, I'm glad he's found some happiness, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what I mean. He's just so concerned with everybody thinking that he is.
But the issue, my point is here, is that the victims and the victims' families. I mean, they're the ones that are living with the loss of their loved one. And is that covered in the book in any sense?
It is to an extent, in the sense that Anna, wrote a little segment about how sorry she was and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what I meant though about my job being a writer. It's one of the things when you're working with someone, it's difficult to like balance that line of like, my goal is in theory to make Anna like happy with the book and like, because she's the one writing the book. So it is in there, but I don't think it's in there to the extent that a lot of people would have liked.
I guess you have to stay kind of neutral. Is that difficult sometimes doing this type of work?
I mean, I should say yes, but honestly, not. I consider myself like it's like I'm most of the stuff I do, I'm kind of a hired gun. So like the only book recently that I've written at all on my own was the book about Elliot Rodger, the insult, the supreme gentleman. Most of the time I'm working with somebody. So it's hard because, on the one hand, I guess it is a little difficult and hard, but on the one hand, I want to put my own stamp on it. But on the other hand, my real job is to like make the person I'm working with happy with my work. So it's a tightrope kind of.
Yeah, well, you're talking about they're having to make people happy, but obviously with Luka, that must be a little bit different because you're trying to tell the facts. Do you know what I mean? So you can't keep everyone happy.
Yeah, no, and Luka wasn't happy. I mean, if you read the book, I mean, what I kind of did with Luka was I just sort of put his stuff just out there as sort of like, oh, these are my questions to Luka. And I even started these chapters with some of Luka's quotes. And a couple people thought I was doing that. Like I was sort of being like, oh, wow, like, look how wise Luka is. But really what I was trying to do was just kind of put his quotes up there as being like absolutely like ridiculous. Because honestly, they are absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, he's done some interviews. There was one weird interview. I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a weird interview that he did in prison where he asks himself questions through like Siri. Like it's like a computerized voice that's asking me a question, but then he denies that it's like a computerized voice. But he mentions me in there and calls me an idiot and so on and so forth. So I was happy with that. In the situation that like I knew that I did my job enough that if Luka was saying, "Oh, Brian's like the best guy in the world," and he told my story, to make me look good, that wouldn't make me feel good at all.
Yeah, and it would have been very difficult to tell his story with him just telling his story without putting the facts in there as well, or at least
sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's the stuff I'm talking about because he claims that he's not schizophrenic, and I mean I put in all that stuff. I mean you have to, it's just weird to have a history of schizophrenia and then claim that you don't. It's just he thinks he can just get away with stuff like that, and no one's ever gonna like double check or something.
Brian, one question I've got as well, that's something I wanted to ask you, is with doing this book, did you get a chance to reach out to any of the victims' families? And if so, what was their response?
I did not. I think I've been asked that question before, and that's very difficult. It's again, this is a book from Anna's perspective. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think me reaching out to a family and saying, saying I'm writing a book with Luka's mom and I've interviewed Luka and I just wanted to kind of get your perspective. It wouldn't have fit into the book itself. So I would just be more doing that for my own reasons because, so I did not. And it's that part's hard. I mean, it's like I was put on a few when it came out. It was huge in Canada. The book did really well in Canada right off the bat. So in America, it didn't do that great at first, but in Canada, so I did a lot of shows in Canada because Anna wasn't doing any press. Like almost immediately, she didn't do any press. So, and it's difficult because I would be asked a question such as, well, I'm not saying this about this question you just asked me, but it'd be like, well, isn't it, kind of exploitive to like be writing this kind of book? And then I'd be sort of like, well, I'm on your show, like you're not saying to you, but you're also promoting this book that you're asking me if it's exploitive. So it's kind of this big circular thing where to me, books like this have more to do with the criminal mind and like how can somebody, societal warnings almost of how people think. I don't think it does any good to ignore these types of things. I don't think it does any good to pretend these things don't happen. I'm not one of these type of people that like, if something happens where a killer puts out a manifesto, I'm not one of the type of people that are like, no one should read that. I kind of want to read it because I want to know like what this person's actually thinking. Because to me, it doesn't benefit me to not know what psychopaths around me are thinking, if you get what I'm saying. So that's kind of a far-reaching answer to that, but I just don't think it would be received well if I were to reach out to. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I should, and it's something possibly I'll think about more in the future. But it's a good question, but it's a hard one to answer because there's almost no good answer to it when you're dealing with a subject matter such as this.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, looking at the mental side of Luka and the signs that were missed, and there were many signs that were missed. Going back to his childhood, then when you interviewed his mother, Anna, what it was his childhood like, and what were some of the signs back then?
Well, see, and that's the same thing. So as far as Luka's version versus the real version, so he was picked on a lot. He grew up in an abusive household. Like both his real father and his stepfather were abusive towards him. They both like his father was schizophrenic. His stepfather had alcohol problems or abusive. He moved out to be with his grandmother when he was very young because of the abuse. He was picked on at school almost mercilessly because he was very effeminate. Always was really concerned with his hair and so on and so forth. But if you ask Luka, he's like, "Oh, it was great. Like I had a great childhood and it's but yeah, Anna's version and the real version has got a very, very, very difficult childhood.
Do you think Anna told you mostly the truth about his childhood, or do you think there were large bits left out that she couldn't face?
Well, I think she told me mostly the truth, but I also, if anyone really wants a lot of information, like Joel Watts, who's a psychiatrist that did the court evaluation on Luka, and I use that extensively. And Luka obviously says Joel Watts is insane and like is making stuff up and so on and so forth. But you can find it on the internet. There's a very, very long document that chronicles like every aspect of his life. So I used a combination of what Anna said and that document.
Right. Yes, because most prisoners wherever in the world that they are checked in when they first go to the bigger prisons, I guess they're sort of psych evaluated, aren't they?
Well, this was a psych evaluation for the trial. It was a psych evaluation that was done on his background, which is where I gathered a lot of the information around him being schizophrenic. Like Anna would say, like, oh yeah, he was actually in group homes growing up. I mean, he was on like their version of Social Security, meaning like disability for a period of time because of his mental illness. Like, there's a lot of stuff with Luka that clearly shows that he's severely mentally ill. But neither one of them will really delve into that deeply, especially Luka.
What sort of scar has this left on his mum's life, do you think, right now?
She's not. It's an interesting thing as to why she wrote the book because I'm honestly not even really sure because it definitely hasn't been a good experience for her. I mean, she's very scarred by it. I mean, she was scarred by it initially, and for some reason she put herself back out in the public eye, and then she got scarred again. And as I said, there's been a lot of offers for her to do things. very recently, over the last month, there's a documentary company, as I stated, that wanted to like pay her money to, and I think she's going to pass on it because she just doesn't want to deal with it anymore.
And as you said earlier on in this interview, she's not even, her relationship with Luka right now is completely strained.
According to her, they don't talk anymore. That they don't have any, sort of any sort of contact at all anymore. And they used to have a lot of contact before this happened.
Do you think that she's in a massive process of trying to forgive her son on what the crimes that he's done at a deeper level? She's trying to do that, do you think?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure. I know she's not happy that they're not in contact anymore, but I mean, I don't know where she is with that, because she's never really, ever since the documentary, like she's never really talked to me about, I'm just going from my perception on how she felt about it, because those guys, I like those guys, the raw guys. Mark Lewis is a really nice guy, but they were just like, I mean, you do the work. I mean, I'm not saying you're duplicitous at all, but like when you're trying to get people to appear on a documentary, it's similar to what I'm talking about, in the sense that you're just going to talk to somebody and then you're going to figure out how to frame it later. And I think I know she thought that she was going to be kind of portrayed as somebody like really setting the record straight. And instead it didn't come out that way at all. She was kind of the lone voice that was on the side of things.
I mean, yes, it could have been done differently, the documentary in that perspective, but I mean, what records is there to set straight when you've got all the evidence pointing towards Luka's crimes? I mean,
100% agree. I'm just saying that I think that they sort of massaged her a little bit to get her on. I mean, they definitely weren't being like, hey, you're probably not going to look that good, but do you want to be on my documentary? It wasn't like that at all. They flew to Toronto before she was on. They hung out with her. They took her out to lunch. There was some money paid for her to be on the documentary. There's a lot of things that were sort of like done to get her to do this. So since then she's been kind of pretty much in hiding, I would say.
Yeah. How do you think that you'll look back on this book in years to come? Do you think this was a sort of a step in your, not just your career, but also the way that you do your work now, in a sense, the way you covered this particular story?
It's a good question, because of all the books that I've done, I mean, this one is the one that, the other ones, like I've worked with a bunch of different people that are, a lot of them are victims of crime, but I've also worked with, like, the one I can think of the most, again, is Gil Valle, who's the known as the Cannibal Cop. Like, I wrote a book with him and I had no issues with that. I mean, he was exonerated. He's free. Like, he's come and hung out where I live, and we've gone out and had a couple drinks, and, he's a weird guy and he had some really weird thoughts, but he didn't actually like do anything. I mean, this situation was, the book itself is, I'm not saying I'm not proud of it, because I like the book, but I mean, it was a very, very difficult process in general. And it's still a little difficult. I don't mind talking about it because it's interesting, and I see why people are interested in it. It's a very interesting case, but I mean, to answer your question, I guess that's still sort of evolving day by day, like how I think about my participation in this particular project.
What is an important message in this particular book, do you think?
Message. I tried my best to make the book honest as much as I could, to show, I think the message would probably be, what I would take from it is, like, how when there are serious signs of mental illness and dangerous activity with a particular individual, that there hopefully would be a better way to, like, get that person some sort of help before they continue to spiral and end up doing, even when he was killing the cats. I mean, that's one of the things even about the documentary. I mean, there's not a whole lot in there. There's a whole lot about, we're going to try to catch him. We're going to try to do this. And that's cool. I mean, good for them. But there's not a whole lot in there about, about like, how society itself, like, his mother, Anna, even she was like, she confronted him at one point. I think that's you in the cat videos. And he was like, at that point, he kind of backed away from her and was like, I don't want to have contact with you anymore. There has to be more done in that situation where not everybody, but people are actually like, I think I know the person that's killing cats in videos. If something was done at that point, this whole story wouldn't be we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
Absolutely, and to try to make sure that history doesn't repeat like this again, because unfortunately for the cats, but there was also the human cost as well. Do you know what I mean? And the innocent lives.
I don't want to minimize the cats either.
No.
I love animals. I couldn't watch the cat videos. I've never watched them to this day.
I know me, yeah.
I'm not going to watch that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have even talked to him if I watched the cat videos, to be honest with you.
No, yeah. Well, thank you for that. And just with your work now as well, what are you working on now?
I'm working on a bunch of different things. I'm working on a book with Slava P, who's a guy that used to work for Vice, and he was arrested for transporting cocaine into Australia. But the crux of this is another big Canada story. If you Google Slava P, there was a lot of press around it. The crux of it was, in theory, he tricked social influencers into doing it with him. And I'm also working with a book with a guy that was shot by David Berkowitz. It's sort of like a follow-up to The Ultimate Evil, which is a book about whether Berkowitz actually acted alone. I'm writing a couple of my own things right now too, just to keep myself entertained.
Fantastic. Good. I mean, there must be a plethora of cases you could choose from. Just the other day, right, I was watching The Innocent Project. Just there's a docuseries just on some of the cases that they covered on The Innocent Project, and I mean, even if there's just so many, there's just so much in this genre. There's so many people with a story out there, isn't there?
Yeah. No, it's true. And as I mentioned, I've done a few books with victims of I did a book with Charity Lee recently, which is a fairly famous case where her son Paris killed her daughter. I did that a while ago, so that came out in February or so. But yeah, there's no shortage of it at all. I mean, there's always something going on in this field, unfortunately.
Yeah, and how do you choose what you're going to write next? Is it got to sort of tick a few boxes for you in some respects?
It all depends. At this point, I have an agent I work with a lot, so quite often he just throws something at me and goes we have this situation and would pay you X amount and so on and so forth. Back in the day, I used to scramble around and just try to find something interesting, and I'd cold call people basically and be like, hey, ever think about writing a book about this? But at this point, it kind of more comes to me.
Okay, well, like I said at the beginning of this interview, I would love to come and interview you in person about a couple of the other bits of work and fantastic books that you've done as well, and we would go back over this one. I just wanted to get you on right now just to talk about this particular one, because obviously it's different in so many ways.
It's fun. I'd love to have you come up sometime.
I would love to do that, and I just want to say, Brian, just thank you for your time right now, because I know that you've got a lot going on, so I appreciate that, and thank you so much for joining us. And just before I forget as well, your website is?
It's brianwhitneyauthor.com, but it's actually down right now. In a couple of weeks, it should be, depending on when this airs, it should be back up. But brianwhitneyauthor.com.
Okay, well, that website's been coming on throughout the interview. Your book's been coming up on the screen as well. All links to yourself, including your Amazon store, are in the description below. Brian, just thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.